What is up, my beautiful people? Welcome back to the Made to Excel Fitness Podcast for you, by you. I'm your host, as always, Mark Torres, and in today's episode 12, it is Mythbusting number 2, and this one's all about sugar. Let's talk about it. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is Monday, May 25th. Happy Memorial Day to you all. Hopefully it's a beautiful weather day from wherever you're listening. Hopefully you're out there enjoying the day, staying safe. Don't let the coronavirus get you. If you're working, hopefully it's a nice, easy day for you. Hopefully you get out early. You enjoy the rest of your day. Get some myth-busting knowledge into your brain first, and then enjoy your Memorial Day in a smart, safe manner. This is completely random, completely out of left field, but over the past few days we've had some beautiful weather here in New York. And the other day I was on a walk and I almost stepped on a snake in the middle of the path. And if you know me, you know that there's nothing in this world that I hate more than snakes. So I'm just happy to be here because the snake almost killed me. It didn't really actually attack me or anything, but it scared me half to death. I was going up a hill and I ended up kind of running down. I fell on my ass once, but I'm just happy to be here, right? The snake almost took me out. I'm happy to be myth busting with you guys on this beautiful Monday. Today's episode, like I said, is all about sugar. The accompanying article will be on mtefit.com on Wednesday. If you're interested in that, definitely check it out. But the reason I wanted to do sugar on this particular episode is because of the fact that on my Made to Excel Fitness Instagram page, I follow a lot of people, right? I follow people that I know. I follow people I don't know, right? But for the most part, it's a lot of fitness accounts, just so I'm in the loop, right? I know what's going on in the fitness industry. I'm not falling behind the curve in any way, shape, or form, right? So there's this one particular coach that I follow, and this person has tens of thousands of followers, right? They've got a decently sized page, not a massive page, but a decently sized page. And a little while ago, they posted an Instagram post, and this post is intense, right? There's a lot to unpack in this one single post. It's not even a really long post. I don't think they used up their entire caption space. They probably used up half of it, but there's a lot of information that they put into this. And this single post by itself will probably spawn 2 or 3 myth-busting podcast episodes, right? So there's a lot to unpack. But obviously today's episode is all about sugar, so I'll try to cliff notes the sugar portions of the Instagram post, right? And I'm not going to read it word for word because I don't want to call anybody out. But here it is, in lesser terms. The entire post is about hormones, refined carbs, and sugar. I'll tell you guys the sugar parts. Sugar wreaks havoc on your hormone levels. They spike your blood sugar, increase insulin, increases inflammation in your body, increases cortisol, it increases your cravings for high-fat, high-sugar junk foods, and it shuts off the goal-oriented rationale parts of your brain. It'll make you more likely to choose low-quality foods that are high in sugar, which the body will readily store as fat. Testosterone will be reduced. It'll put you in a catabolic or tissue-degrading state, so you're losing muscle, and you will have greater fat accumulation, right? And then at the end, they give a little bit of what their version of a fix is, right? So this person is saying that sugar is going to put you in a state where you're going to lose muscle, you're going to gain fat, and your brain's going to make dumber decisions, right? Not a good start for sugar. This person is going in on sugar, right? And I'll give this person the benefit of the doubt in that their clientele, I think their intended clientele is that of a really high-level CrossFit competitor, right? So if somebody who's trying to compete at a very, very high level, they've got to be really on their game and really strict with their nutrition, right? So somebody who's a high-level CrossFit competitor will have different guidelines that they follow than Bob from down the street, right? But I'm sure that this person has Bobs from down the street that follow them. Do those same guidelines pertain to Bob from down the street? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So starting from the beginning, there's refined sugar and there's natural sugar. Natural sugar sounds exactly how it is. It's the sugar you find naturally in fruits, vegetables, dairy, grains, seeds, nuts, all those fun things, right? They all have natural sugars that come with them. And then a refined sugar is a natural sugar that gets extracted and it gets chemically processed in some way, shape, or form. Table sugar and high fructose corn syrup are 2 of the more common refined sugars that you see out in the wild. And then from this particular article that I read, right, if you Google refined sugar, it is probably the first or the second article that pops up. This is something that I pulled directly from that website, so you can go read it yourself. but some of the negative health benefits of a high sugar diet. For instance, consuming large amounts of refined sugar, especially in the form of sugary beverages, has been consistently linked to obesity and excess belly fat, a risk factor for conditions like diabetes and heart disease. In particular, foods enriched with high fructose corn syrup may cause you to become resistant to leptin, a hormone that signals your body when to eat and when to stop. This may partly explain the link between refined sugar and obesity. Many studies also suggest that diets high in added sugar will increase heart disease risk. Additionally, diets rich in refined sugar are commonly linked to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, depression, dementia, liver disease, and certain types of cancer, right? So that's a lot of negative health effects, negative health benefits that come with high sugar diets, right? Not a good look for sugar. And the one thing that I will say about this article is that they specifically talk about refined sugar in that negative health benefit statement, right? So it's added sugar, right? So when it comes to, if somebody says you shouldn't eat a banana because it's high in sugar, that doesn't necessarily apply to this, because sugar, the sugar in a banana is natural sugar, right? This is specifically talking about refined sugar or added sugar, which are interchangeable terms in this scenario. So a high amount of added sugar in your diet could possibly lead to these negative health benefits, right? And then they go on to say, if you want to avoid a high sugar diet, you should avoid the following foods: soft drinks, sports drinks, specialty coffee drinks, energy drinks, vitamin water, some fruit beverages, granola, breakfast cereal, cereal bars, chocolate bars, candy, pie, ice cream, croissants, some breads, baked goods, baked beans, canned vegetables, fruit purees, jams, nut butter, spreads, low-fat yogurt, low-fat peanut butter, low-fat sauces, ketchup, salad dressing, pasta, pizza, frozen meals, mac and cheese. Now, some of you guys out there might say, that is 50% of my diet is the things on those lists. Should I be worried? Should I be worried about my health? That's all the things that I eat, right? For some of you, maybe more, maybe less. I certainly eat a lot of these things on this list myself, right? Maybe not all the time, but I'm definitely in that category, right? So should you be worried about your health in terms of the foods that you're eating, when this particular article says that you should avoid them? And the other thing that they say in this is that refined sugars are heavily processed, and natural sugars are usually found in nutrient-rich foods. So refined sugars, you strip all the vitamins and minerals out of the natural sugar that was there originally, you refine it, and now it becomes an empty calorie, right? So when people talk about empty calories, it's probably something that's pretty calorically dense, right? Sugar has a lot of calories to start off with, and refined sugars don't have any nutritional value, or very little nutritional value, I should say. So very high in calories, no nutritional value. That's what we would call an empty calorie, versus a natural sugar which still has the vitamins and minerals attached to that. So it may be worthwhile to eat. So that's something that a lot of people talk about as well, is empty calories versus worthwhile calories in terms of nutrition. And when it comes to refined sugars and natural sugars, it's pretty easy to spot the difference, right? A natural sugar is a banana, it's a fruit, something that naturally occurs in nature, and a refined sugar is something like a Snickers bar, right? Snickers bars have added refined sugar in them, so you're able to kind of tell the difference when you're walking around a grocery store, right? Should be relatively easy to find out. So when it comes to whether or not this does have a negative health benefit or a negative health effect on your body, or whether this can hinder your fitness progress, this is kind of a little bit of an older argument, right? The argument has since moved to keto and veganism. That's the hot thing in the streets now. But in 2014, the Fed Up documentary came out, and it was out on Netflix, and I remember watching it when I was in college. And while I was going through college as an exercise science major, there were things in that documentary that resonated with me, but also things that were kind of like a little bit sketchy, I guess I would say, things that I was questioning. And when it comes to some of the stats in that documentary, especially in particular, you've got Katie Couric, you've got Bill Clinton, you've got these other big names that are in this documentary. It can seem very much so trustworthy, right? But after that documentary came out, there's a lot of people that went and started to debunk it a little bit. So one of the things that people were saying was that over time, fat consumption has decreased, carbohydrate consumption has increased, overall calorie intake has also increased, right? So do those two things that also increased have a hand in the obesity epidemic that's happening in this country, in the world? Not just particularly sugar, maybe. And over time, sugar consumption had actually decreased from where it was before, and obesity was still rising, right? So these are two very conflicting points. do you decide to side with Katie Couric and Bill Clinton, or you decide to side with this other side that's saying the opposite thing, right? That's where the water starts to get a little bit murky, right? And before I start to wrap this up, I want to also kind of talk about the fact that the American Heart Association suggests that for men, no more than 37.5 grams of sugar per day, and for women, 25 grams of sugar per day. But if you think about it, one banana has 14 grams of sugar, so that's either half or even more than half of your daily intake for sugar for the day in one single banana, right?
So if there's three things that are absolutely unavoidable in this life, it is death, taxes, and sugar, right?
And in terms of debating between refined sugar and natural sugar, right, one Twinkie has 33 grams of sugar versus a Yoplait Original Lemon Burst 99% fat-free yogurt has 32 grams of sugar, right? So 1 gram less of sugar for something that can be marketed as being very healthy versus something that's marketed to be very unhealthy. They have very similar amounts of sugar in them. So what gives? What is the truth here? And this is where the myth busting gets to be a little bit difficult, right? Because in myth busting number 1, which is all about metabolism, we had these specific data points, right? And we can point at this specific thing and say, all right, this thing negatively affects your metabolism, right? It slows it down. But we know that it only slows it down by 40 or 50 calories, right? So in the grand scheme of things, 40 or 50 calories is not going to be the catalyst that deters you from making progress, right? So we can point at the data in that particular situation and say, all right, that can be a myth that can be busted, right? We're good with that. In terms of, also big fitness narratives, the other way you can kind of look at it is there a reason somebody would push this in the terms of like they could profit off of it, right? The idea of knowing how to boost your metabolism, right? If you can convince people that you have this secret to boost your metabolism in order for people to make progress with very little effort, that is something you can monetize, right? You can convince people to give you their money if you can convince them that you can boost their metabolism and they can have progress with very little effort, right? But it wasn't until this coronavirus lock-in and over the past 2 months, I got introduced to these two guys. Their names are Ben and Jerry. And I've eaten lots of Ben & Jerry's ice cream over the past 2 months, right? I've taken down multiple pints of half-baked, peanut butter half-baked, Gimme S'more, Peanut Butter World, Netflix and Chilled, Chip Happens, Glamfire Trail Mix, all these different things. I've eaten a lot of ice cream over the past 2 months. In fact, I've eaten ice cream for the past 4 days in a row. Am I gaining weight? Yes, I am, right? I don't know exactly how much weight I'm gaining. I haven't been keeping track, but I have gained weight over the past 2 months, right? Can I look at it and say it's the sugar's fault? It probably doesn't help, right? But it's not maybe necessarily sugar, but the fact that a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream has over 1,000 calories and maybe even 1,300 calories depending on the flavor, right? It's very calorically dense. The nutritional value isn't there. It's an empty calorie. So is it the sugar? Not necessarily the sugar, but maybe the calories that come with the sugar. And is it specifically that Ben & Jerry's? Definitely not helping, but I also can't ignore the fact that I'm eating 2 breakfasts on most days, and there's days where I eat 3 slices of pizza, and there's days where I eat burgers and fries and fast food and all these things. And for me to point the finger particularly at sugar doesn't necessarily make sense when all these things around me are also not in control, right? So from a logical standpoint, in my situation, is it smart of me to point the finger at sugar when all these other things also are attributing to my overall weight gain? Not so much, right? So if you're a person who's had trouble with your weight and you think it's maybe the sugar, you got to look at the kind of the other circumstances surrounding you, right? Is everything else under control? More than likely not, right? More than likely maybe you're over consuming like I am, right? And it's not necessarily the sugar that is the demonizing factor in this scenario, right? So as long as your sugar is done in moderation, if you're overdoing it, these negative health benefits are definitely a possibility to come into play, right? If you're overdoing it, it's possible that it's very calorically dense and you're going to go over your calories and cause you to gain weight, right? So if you're overdoing it, this myth definitely has some merit, right? But to tell people to cut it out altogether doesn't necessarily make sense if that person is able to do it in moderation, right? For somebody to point at sugar as the one particular thing that's stopping people from losing weight is like a person saying, I get a lot of speeding tickets because I drive a really fast car. No, not in particular, because even the shittiest car that you can drive will go over the speed limit. It's if you choose to go over the speed limit, right? So having a fast car doesn't necessarily mean more speeding tickets. Speeding means more speeding tickets, right? So if you're over consuming, then yeah, you can run into some problems. But to tell somebody to cut, sugar out of their diet completely doesn't necessarily make sense, right? If that's a conclusion that you come to and that's a decision that you want to make and you want to go ahead and cut sugar from your diet, that's absolutely your prerogative to do so, but it's not particularly necessary, right? If you're a diabetic, pre-diabetic, you might be in a little bit of a different situation. But for most people, as long as you can do things in moderation and everything around you is controlled, you should be good to go and you can enjoy some of your favorite treats, right? And the other kind of thing that people say is that eating these empty calories are pointless, right? But if these things bring you joy in terms of food, there's absolutely a point to doing that, right? I eat a lot of ice cream because I enjoy ice cream. And if I can control the things surrounding that, then I want to continue to eat ice cream as long as all my other factors are in my control and I can continue to make progress, and I can absolutely set it up to be that way, and you can too at home, in order to continue to make progress and to live a healthy, balanced life. So do not feel the need to cut sugar from your diet. Consider this a myth busted, but these things do come into play if you go overboard, right? So always keep that in the back of your mind. So we'll consider this myth busted. Don't feel like you have to cut sugar out of your diet. But that about wraps up that portion of the show. Like I said at the beginning, the accompanying article to this podcast will be out on Wednesday on mtefit.com if you want to read more about sugar and its effect on your weight, on your diet, on your health, all that fun stuff. So be on the lookout for that. But that wraps up that myth busting number 2, myth busted. Sugar not that bad. And I don't want this to be kind of the narrative that I'm trying to push people to eat more sugar, right? I don't want people to say like, hey, come here, listen to this podcast. This guy claims to be a personal trainer and he's telling people to eat sugar, right? That's not the point. I'm not saying you should eat sugar, right? Especially not in excess, because you will possibly run into some negative health benefits down the road. But if you do it in moderation and you do it in a smart fashion, you can absolutely live the best of both worlds. So, I don't want the narrative to be that there's one particular thing that leads to your demise, but more than likely it's a bunch of different things kind of put together. And once you start to remedy everything a little bit, the picture starts to get a little bit clearer. So hopefully that wraps that up. Today's Q&A, there's only one question, and the question was, how long does it take from start to finish to make a podcast episode? And it really varies from topic to topic, right? If I'm talking about a topic that's a little bit more conversational, there's no prior research needed, I can just set up the camera and talk to it. Usually takes 1 or 2 takes, and there's very little edit time. It's a really quick go through, right? The fitness happiness paradox, which I don't remember what episode that was a conversational topic. It was really quick. There wasn't a big specific point that I was trying to make, right? The point was that the balance between fitness and happiness is going to be different for everybody. So as long as I said that even one time, the overall essence of the podcast landed very well. And all in all, that podcast was like half an hour, right? Half an hour in and out, good to go. But a podcast that's a little more data driven, right? Myth busting number 1 was a nightmare to make. Even this one took a little bit of time. But myth busting, when I came up with the idea, I was like, man, this is going to be dope, right? There's a lot of things out there that are very misleading. People are falling prey to. People are spending money on things that they necessarily shouldn't need to spend money on. So if I can start to debunk those things and to start to open some people's eyes over this could be really awesome, right? This could be my most researched episode, my most informational episode, my most helpful episode for anybody that listens. This is going to be amazing, right? And just the research alone, I spent an hour and a half researching. So that's 2 to 3 times longer than the entire Fitness Happiness Paradox podcast took to make, right? Just in research. And then when it came to actually recording the episode, I probably have 20 plus fail takes of Mythbusting 1 on my phone, right? And a lot of those were, fails right from the beginning, right in the intro. And from a time standpoint, that's not too big of a deal, right? But once those start to compound and have a little bit of a snowballing effect, it does get frustrating. And there's maybe 3 or 4 takes on my phone that are somewhere in the 15 to 20 minute range, which were, when I had the research, I had 2 pages worth of notes. So as opposed to me talking about it naturally, just off the top of my head, I almost had like a little bit of a script, right? I had all these points that I had to hit in order to hit my overall overarching point that I was trying to make. So I was trying to read through the script, and right at the very end, I got lost. I lost track of where I was talking. I started losing the words, and I, just cut it, right? So I have 3 or 4 takes that are 15 to 20 minutes where like I almost got there, just fell short. And then there was 1 take that was a full half an hour take. I got through all of it. I hit all the points. I did the Q&A. It was a full episode, but I didn't like the way the point that I was trying to make landed, right? It didn't feel like it really had the impact that I wanted it to have, but it was so late in the week already, and I was starting to lose my voice. I said, you know what, it's a full episode. It is what it is. I'm not particularly happy with it, but I have no choice. Like, I have to have this done by today if I wanted to have it out by Monday. But luckily enough, I had done it early enough in the day that I was able to have some food. I was able to work out after that. And after that, my mind was a little bit clearer. And I was able to say, you know what, I'm going to do it one more time. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, I have a take that I can use. If it does work, great. And luckily, I sat down, one half-an-hour shot. And it was the shot that ended up making the actual podcast. So it ended up working out. That podcast landed a lot better than the first one did. But in terms of recording that one, I was recording for like 3 hours. I had a lot of failed takes. So, the fitness happiness paradox took half an hour. Mythbusting number 1 took like 5 hours, 5.5 hours. Obviously, last week's episode with Armand, Cheesy Fit, we had 2 Zoom calls. One was an hour, one was a half an hour. But a lot of that was just us shooting the shit, and a lot of it obviously didn't make it. But that being the longest podcast episode at an hour and 6 minutes, that one took maybe 2.5 hours to make. So it varies a lot. So if you're asking this in the sense of you want to maybe start your own podcast, it's really going to depend. It's going to depend on how comfortable you are talking. It's going to depend on how comfortable you are with the topic of any particular podcast. And the other thing to think about is, I have a little bit of experience with video editing, so the video editing part of it goes relatively quickly for me. That might be a little bit of a learning curve for you if you decide to jump into it. So it really depends. And it depends on the structure of your podcast. So there's a lot of variables here. But for me, half an hour to anywhere from 5.5 hours. So obviously, when I do end up going back to work, I'm hoping I don't have to spend 5.5 hours on a podcast, because then I am screwed. But that wraps up today's show. If you guys have any more Q&A questions, hit me up on Instagram at MTEFit. Email me at made2excelfitness@gmail.com. Website mtefit.com. You can contact me there as well. Facebook, Made to Excel Fitness. All those fun places. Get in contact with me. Ask me Q&A questions. I will gladly answer them on the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's show. Be on the lookout for the article on Wednesday. mtefit.com. Subscribe, share, comment. I appreciate you all. Peace out.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, man? Hunter Henry, LA Charger tight end. Best big time shout out to your fitness podcast, the Made to Excel Fitness podcast. So super cool, man. Got a lot going on. Bolt Ganger, don't bang.